So COVID has changed media jobs. That's a given. You see some of these trends emerging. But what are these trends exactly? This is why we've got Haikel Fahim here to join us today. Haikel comes from Telemedia, which is what we were just saying earlier, the CIA of all media jobs that are out there. They know where people are going, what they're doing. They're following them. If you thought, some of these AI things are scary, you should see what these guys are doing. Actually, before we get into that, I just want to plug Heikel's new podcast, which you should all be listening to.
Please.
It is called the Ironing Board Podcast. And in it, Heikel talks about some of the things that are very difficult to talk about in Singapore society, things like depression, things like mental health. So this is something that he launched. I think it's only episode 1, right, Heikel? So go to your favorite podcast app, start downloading and subscribing. Over to you, buddy.
Thank you, guys. It is just episode 1 for the Ironing Board, but episode 2 will be out next week, so do look up for that. But today is not about the Ironing Board. I will be representing Telemedia, which is my day job, the one that actually pays me. And I will be talking about some of the trends that we are seeing in the media currently, more specifically on the jobs. Just give me a second. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully this works. And you should be seeing this. I can't see you guys right now, but I hope you guys are seeing this. Yeah?
Yep,
yeah?
It's there. It's
okay,
perfect.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about job trends in the media. And these are basically some of the observations that we have seen at Telemedia. So they might not be reflective of all the markets all the markets in the world, but we mainly cover the Asia Pacific markets, so certain parts of Asia Pacific. I'll get into that a little bit later on, and hopefully it gives you a better understanding of what we've seen and gives you a bit of a clue on what's going on in the realms of the media jobs currently. So just before I start, a little bit about Telemedia. So we are a media intelligence platform for PR professionals in Asia. So public relations professionals subscribe to the media platform that we provide to access information on journalists that we've gathered as part of our job, basically. So we create a network of journalists and PRs and connecting one to the other, and we support both sides. One of the things that we do to help journalists is to connect with sources. So interviewees, so if you guys are writing stories, looking for interviewees, looking for experts, looking for your next guest on your shows, case studies, statistics, things like that, you are able to put a request on our platform and it will connect you directly to people who may have something relevant for you and they'll get in touch with you directly. So we're just the intermediary. We run a newsletter what we call alerts and covering different aspects. So one of the things that we do, media jobs and moves. So media jobs is actually a separate one. So it is basically highlighting editorial vacancies in the regions that we cover, and moves, basically if you've made a move from one position to another, we run that as well. Media updates, if new launches of publications and things like that, we do that. And also freelance shout out. So we don't forget freelance network, and we give them a shout out whenever they move into a freelance role and looking for gigs. So we cover 3 main regions, and namely Southeast Asia, which I'm the head of. So I'm head of Southeast Asia at Telemedia. And I have counterparts in East Asia, based mainly in our Hong Kong office, and also in Australia and New Zealand, based in our Sydney office. In Southeast Asia, though, we have offices in 5 different markets, namely Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. And so what are we going to be talking about today? I'm going to talk about the trends that we are seeing, as we've said earlier. One of the trends that we're seeing are journalists moving into communications, moving into PR, because we obviously sit in between the two. We are able to see movements onto either side. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to compare some of the number of editorial vacancies in different markets that are available right now, and also some of what we've seen over the past year. The rise in the freelancer market, and moving on to the online space, and what's the outlook like in the near future. So the question is, are we losing more journalists? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. So there's been a percentage drop in number of journalists this time last year, so more specifically last month, August 2019 versus August 2020. In some of the markets that we cover, as you can see there, we've seen drops in numbers of journalists everywhere. Hong Kong and Malaysia are the hardest hit ones. It is an unfortunate situation, but what we've seen is that this have been severely affected by COVID. So most of the job losses came towards the earlier part of this year. So sometime between February to about May are where we see lots of job losses, although some are still taking place, over the past couple of months or so. So you might ask, where are we losing them to? One trend that we're definitely seeing is that people are moving into communications. So you can see, in our alerts that we ran, like I said, we announced people moving roles, right? So moving into communications in-house, into different groups. Some are into PR agencies. So there's actually quite a lot of these happening. So communications industry has always been a popular destination for journalists. So this is one area that we definitely see more journalists, want to dabble themselves in. And this is, again, consistent throughout the region. So some of screenshots that I've taken on screen, as you can see, they're not just within a particular country. So it's quite consistent across Asia, and I can tell for sure around Southeast Asia. So we've seen this quite a lot, and at Telemedia we organize webinars. So every few weeks or so we put together a webinar talking about the most current topics that's happening in the industry. Some are specific to certain markets, and very recently we organized a webinar about people who moved into the dark side or the other side. So perspective from journalists who moved into PR. So what we had was 3 former journalists in senior positions tell us what they have learned in their new roles, and also what they've brought from their previous positions into their new positions. You can watch a recording of this on our website. I'll put in the link in the chat later. I can't just access to the chat box right now, but I'll put in the link into the chat later on. So if you'd like to explore that and want to have a listen, I'll share the link later on, and you can click on it, or you can just go onto our websites on our homepage. That's www.telemedia.com, by the way. And during the session, right, we decided to run a poll to see if people from, from either side, whether they feel that, what's on the other side. So if they are a journalist, are there better prospects in communications, and vice versa? And we ran a poll, and it's quite interesting. So the first poll is that we said that, if you're a journalist, answer this question: would you switch industries if given the opportunity? And most people actually agree they would actually switch industries. So it shows that people in journalism do see a career for them, or future for them in communications. And then we turn the tables and put it to communications practitioners who were in session, and see whether they would think that there are better opportunities for them in the media. Unfortunately, it switched. So they do not think that they have better prospects in the media. Although we know that on both sides there are transferable skills in either direction, it was more probable that a journalist would switch industries and move into communications or into PR. So that's one interesting observation that we saw from the webinar. I promise you I'm not going to just keep on giving you bad news, although the next bit is again a bit of unfortunate news, and unfortunate trend. There's been a loss of opportunities. So the editorial openings in the first 6 months of 2019 versus 2020, there's been a drop. So in 2020, we see a 19% drop in January to June 2020 versus 2019. In Southeast Asia, there's 19% drop. In East Asia, there's China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, 9% drop. And in Australia and New Zealand, the hardest hit with 34% drop. So opportunities are at premium in the media currently, and that's why I guess with certain job cuts in certain publishers and certain media houses, people are looking elsewhere. to seek new opportunities. The other space that we've seen people moving into is the freelance market. So I wrote this article, I think in July or in June, where we start seeing an observation where there's been a rise of freelancers in the market. We are running more and more of those, freelance shout-outs in our alerts. And we saw that rise, and we wanted to look into a little bit more. So I'll share the link to this a little bit later as well in chat group, in the chat if you'd like to see. But it's on my LinkedIn profile. So if you look me up on on LinkedIn, you'll see this as well. And so rise of freelancers, right? There are, so those are numbers. So first 6 months last year versus first 6 months of this year, there's been a 2% rise. In Singapore, Malaysia, 21%, Indonesia, 131%. That's massive. And Philippines, 14%, Thailand, 5%. So the freelance hiring model seems to be a short-term solution. We'll see for publishers who can't commit to full-time employees. And it also allows, the freelance market allows people to maintain a good work-life balance as well. So, sorry. This must be Jakob. Must be infecting me. I'm kidding, Jakob. I'm back. And so, so I was just saying that, they are able to maintain good work-life balance. So it's been a bit more attractive, especially in times of COVID. And one of the things that we've seen as well, freelancers are also able to take on content writing work for brands and not just for media houses. So that's one of the things that we are seeing. Excuse me. The other thing that it's not quite new, so it's not a new trend, but it's been a trend for many years. It's moving online, digitalization, right? But COVID has been the biggest mover in terms of digitalization for media companies, as far as we can see in recent years. So people moving online are becoming more. We see more and more of it. So the shift to online has been even more rapid because of COVID. And with this, we've seen that there's been a different wave of new skills and prerequisites that are in demand in the job market. So I'll talk about this in a second. And so what are the skills that are in demand? So one of the things that we've seen is that writing content for web. So that's definitely something that is definitely been asked around for quite a lot. Being able to produce infographics. So infographics journalist has been one of the things that have become an essential skill for lots of online media. Video and multimedia production is the other one. Podcasting puts the reason why I produce a podcast as well. Social media content is the other. So just producing news specifically for social media. And last but not least, content marketing. So not just content that are for news, but sponsored content for in-house brands and in-house titles as well. I'm sorry. I was just going to say that there are more podcasts so far this year than the entire of last year. So we've seen the rise as well. I'm sorry, guys. But what's coming? So we've seen that the jobs are coming back, right? There's been a 50% rise in vacancies if you look in the past 3 months. So June to August this year versus the first between March and May versus June to August, we've seen that there's a 50% rise in vacancies, in editorial vacancies in the regions that we cover. We've also seen new media and new programs that are being launched, not a massive shift, but a 3% increase. So there are new opportunities in these new titles that are being launched. Most of them, again, are online titles, or rather on online platforms. And more new editorial positions have started. So there have been more new people starting editorial positions in June to August this year. versus March to May this year. So yeah. Oh gosh, what's happening to me? But if you want to, keep track of some of these changes, just go to the Telemedia website and sign up to the media alerts. They're for free. So that's www.telemedia.com. So one of the alerts that we actually run are job alerts. So again, editorial vacancies in 3 different markets: Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and East Asia. And yeah, you'll be able to get this for free into your mailbox every week. The other is, again, media moves and news. So if you've got people starting new positions and all that, you want to keep track of those. Again, you can sign up to these alerts on our website. We also run interviews and summary of our webinars and all that, and links to the recordings are all on our media alerts as well. And I just wanted to say as well, we are also putting together a job site to help with putting together some of our job alerts in coming months. This is hopefully will be able to foster better opportunities for journalists across all the different markets that we cover. So I'll stop coughing and I'll stop sharing my screen. But I'll exit right now and I'll go back to you guys so I can see you guys. And
very good.
Yeah, that's it from me.
Man.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, very quickly, if I could kick off the questions here. I think what's really interesting, and this is a trend that we were watching as well, the shift to freelancing, right? That's out there. I think a lot of these that's a trend that is going to continue to evolve. And I think we need to, as an industry, think of ways to support them better as they make that journey forward, right? What do you think this region needs in terms of supporting freelancers?
I think it's just better opportunities. One of the things that perhaps that we can see is that there are no regulations around supporting the freelance journalists. So it's all very ad hoc. Everything's contracted, quite sometimes even on a gentleman basis, and that's quite unhealthy. We've seen obviously freelancers who aren't paid on time, sometimes not paid at all, and we definitely want that to stop. And one of the things that we hope to see are publications or even in-house or different brands who want to hire freelance writers are able to come up with a program that will be able to keep freelancers on a payroll or at least on some sort of a program to keep it going, keep it sustainable, basically.
Haikel, thanks for that. I'm going to go to Hannah. Hannah, you want to go loud, ask your question about pivoting to comms?
Hi, Haikel.
Hey, Hannah, how are you?
Hello. I was hoping to see the ironing board, but never mind. So my question is, especially since more journalists are keen to pivot to comms, my observation is that a lot of comms roles require agency experience running campaigns. They usually say, oh, they want 5 to 8 years experience in being in-house or being agency. And a journalist role is very, very different from that. It's very much more news gathering. You never touch any kind of campaigns. So is it more difficult for long-time journalists to pivot to this? And how can they bridge that gap?
Okay, that's not entirely very true from what we've seen, or at least from what I've seen. In fact, when we did the webinar, the 3 journalists who we had with us were all very senior journalists, very senior former journalists. And they were able to pivot into comms. I mean, in fact, 2 of them were in agencies and 1 of them in-house. And even today, I've just seen somewhere within our internal chat groups, people and a PR agency looking for a journalist to join their teams. So we must remember that either moving into a PR agency in a comms position, or be it in-house within a brand, within a company, right? You don't work, individually. You always work in teams. So the skills and the relevance that you bring as a journalist is really, really valuable to them, because there will be other people who will be doing other stuff. You will bring values such as understanding how a newsroom functions, understanding how to pitch to a journalist for a successful story, and not just blasting far and wide, for example, and hoping something sticks, right? And so you are able to bring all those skills effectively to the organization that you join, either in an agency format or in a company. And we've seen people moving to both and doing it very, very well.
Hey, Vishal has a question about Telum versus Muckrack. I mean, do you consider yourselves somewhat of a Muckrack competitor? Are you different operationally?
Very, very different, I would say, because we obviously we put out content, and to be honest, it's very, very similar to types of content to a lot of other companies producing PR or journalism type of content. But where we differ in terms of business is obviously we support the communications industry with our media intelligence platform, and making sure that we track the journalists with wherever they move, right? And making sure that we support the journalists wherever they move as well. Making sure that, again, if they are in one position right now and they move to a different beat or different position later on, that they are able to have access to sources in whichever industry or whichever markets that they are in. So that's how we support both industries. And I don't think that's what Muckrack does at all.
Yep, fair enough. So Johanna Son was on yesterday. Johanna is from Reporting ASEAN. Johanna, would you like to go live and ask your question? You were talking about the switch from PR. There you are. We need you to unmute. Johanna, you're on mute. Still can't hear you, though. Still can't hear you, Johanna.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
There you are.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a question like about the information on the switch. I was wondering, like, among the countries you have data on, like, where is the switch most most acceptable to the person who switched? I mean, because in some markets, I think it is easier, and like I know from the Philippines that it's usually a one-way street. It's not easy to come back because people then know you as like a communications or a PR person. So, and I don't know about the others, but generally I think journalists tend to think that is a loss. Yeah, I think you framed it as a loss. I would say though that from my own experience, like I used to have trainees from the communications faculty of Ngee Polytechnic for like almost 20 years. So every year I had 2 of them, and they were quite good. Then when I realized once that of all of them, only 3 ended up in media. The rest ended up in advertising, PR, and communication. So yeah, maybe in some, this transfer is easier in some than others.
I would say that perhaps you're right. Perhaps the move from journalism to communications is easier than the other way as well. That's perhaps the reason why we see that the difference in terms of numbers as well, right? So people moving into communications from being in media versus the other way around is a lot bigger. But I wouldn't say it's more acceptable in one market or the other. Because, like I said, it's quite consistent throughout from what we've seen. So it's not just in one market where we've seen people moving into communications more than the other. It's quite consistent everywhere. But if you're asking also, if you're wondering at least, are there people who move from communications to journalism? Yes, there are. But are there a lot of them? No, there aren't that many. But some people do make that switch, and because they want to be involved in the media, and that's definitely all right. And we think that like I said, there are transferable skills either way, and you'll be able to be valuable in both industries. So there, I wouldn't say that it's more acceptable in certain markets, or which way is more acceptable. In fact, moving from journalism to communications, people in the industry call it moving to the dark side. I personally don't call it the dark side. It's the other side, but it's not exactly dark. It's quite bright, actually. Its future is quite bright there as well. But yeah, no, we don't think or at least I don't think that it's more acceptable in some countries versus the other, because it's been quite consistent from our reporting and people coming to us, and from our research that it's the same across the markets that we all the markets that we cover.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joanna.
And Florence, as always, has great questions. Here's a good one. So Florence, why don't you unmute yourself with this?
Thanks, Alan. Hi, Haikel.
Hey, Florence.
Yeah, I think I met some of your representatives here in Indonesia. They were trying to cover our activities here in Jakarta. They were nice folks. I'm just curious. How did you measure this changes? And do you see any, or do you have any data on gender breakdown? I mean, we already have a female deficit in newsrooms anyway, and I know we're seeing the numbers go down with media even before the COVID, and COVID just sort of exacerbated the entire process and speed it up. And do you have this is there any particular gender that is leading the switch more than the other gender?
Okay, I'll take the first question first. How do we measure it? It's basically just on the data. We deal with lots of data in Telum, because just the number of people that we track in terms of moving from one position to the other, whether it's a more senior position, whether it's more junior position, to what types of media they move into, or to move into a different industry altogether, or to move into education, and making a total career switch. We have those kind of data. So that's how basically I gathered what I presented. But to your question on gender breakdown, I don't have that data with me. It is possible, I believe, to pull out that data from Telum on the back end. It is an interesting question. I definitely, am interested in the numbers around that as well. So, thanks for that. I might just, connect with you personally after this and see whether I have those numbers for you.
Sure, it's interesting because I can see the switch between being a media or a journalist to comms here in Indonesia. I can just tell you offhand, there are so many female journalists that are accepting the comms job. I think in a way because maybe the package is just more interesting to them, or in a way that the media environment is no longer conducive for them. But I would really like to know the number, especially and also the freelance. Are there more female freelance journalists out there? Or their counterparts. But yeah, I would love to learn more about that gender breakdown.
Yeah, no, this is very, very interesting data to pull together, and very interesting to report on as well, right? But I can tell you, coming from the industry as well, that the communications industry are more female dominated. It's not massively, but yeah, there are more females in the communications industry than males. But I can't quite say what it's like in the freelance world or in journalism as a whole right now.
Right. Thanks, Haikel.
Cheers.
Hey, Haikel. So when you look forward let's say a year from now, we would have this conversation a year from now, what new trends do you think would be emerging, or which trends do you think would just solidify, and and that would be the boat that we're on, for the next foreseeable future?
I see that there are, from at least again from my own observations, I see lots of media streamlining into more niche topics, and that's nice to see, because there's an expert opinion on various topics, and also just to give more in-depth analysis on various topics in the world, right? And not just coming up with another media publication covering just about everything under the sun, because I think we've got a lot of that already. A lot of it will still be in the online space from what I can see. It is still, however, a struggle to streamline revenue models, because that's a conversation that's ever present, or it's omnipresent. We're always talking about what works, what doesn't work, and every single year since I've been at Telum, I've taken that conversation, joining various forums and various discussions, and there hasn't been one answer, and there isn't a model, because setting up a particular media organization, you guys know this. It's not a set formula where you can take because someone else has done it, I'll do it the exact same way, and it'll be successful. So unfortunately, that's not the case. So I will see that people moving to the online space, and also trying to diversify their revenue streams. So not just sticking to one revenue stream, and again, targeting to a certain set of audience, and be the masters in that particular area or that particular niche. And that's where I feel that people will be successful. So I expect more and more of those to come up.
Nice, Haikel. Thank you. I just wanted to go back to your slide where you'd mentioned skills in demand. And I was curious, not just about those skills, you've mentioned podcasting, social media content, content marketing, video skills, infographic skills, design skills. How have you seen a shift at all, a corresponding shift at all to entrepreneurship? We've seen the loss of jobs, and we've seen the rise in freelancing, but are we seeing media startups? Are we seeing media startups of one person, two people? Are people starting up businesses at all? Are you seeing data on that?
People are, because I started a podcast. So that's
Case in point.
Because you saw the trend.
Yeah. But there, in all seriousness, yes, people do move into into a more consultancy type of format as well. So not just selling themselves as freelancer to write for various news organizations and various media organizations, but some of them provide content consultancy, workshops, and some people from for example, there's a bunch of reporters from SPH in Singapore a couple of years back, who put together an editorial consultancy and helping brands and companies produce better content internally. And all of them are former journalists. So we've seen them moving it first into a freelance format where, we are a bunch of freelancers able to produce content for various media houses and not just committing to one title, and changing that format into a more entrepreneurial format where they are able to take on clients and providing different aspects of consultancy in terms of, again, like content work, or really them themselves producing news or running workshops and teaching other people how to do it.
Hey, Janicia, jump in with your question. You look like you're deep in thought. Like this is provoking you at some level.
Hi, Haikel. I used to be a journalist, not a very serious one, but whatever. And I'm seeing a lot of friends of mine who are still working with a lot of left-wing kind of organizations struggle with censorship, and with, it's not even overt. They've kind of, the whole thing about, they say bow and you kneel. So it's kind of, you're preempting any kind of trouble because you don't know how volatile the situation can get. Some of those numbers, especially like in Hong Kong, is that reflecting? Are people just kind of getting demotivated and saying, forget it, I'll just do comms. It's too dangerous to be a journalist. Is that happening?
Yeah, no, I can't say that I have data per se to do that, but I have anecdotal experiences speaking to people on the ground, that yes, that has been the case. But at the same time, I have been speaking with some journalists and people, media practitioners who have come forward and say that, this is something that I have to do. This is something I have to do for the people. This is something I need to pursue, and I will not back down for the better, the good of the people and good for the country, right? So there have been people who have moved out of the industry from my own personal experiences and my personal conversations with journalists. Places such as Hong Kong is one, Philippines is the other, where we've seen people moving out of industry because they deem is, like I said, not worth it or too dangerous. Not the exact words they would use, but I would say yes. They are moving out of the positions because of some of the dangers that might provide to them, either physically or also in terms of opportunities that might be in the future. But having said that, like I said in my presentation, there are the opportunities across the markets that we cover in Telemedia have been rising over the past 3 months, at least that we can see, and we hope that that's a trend that will continue into the later part of this year and even into next year.
Nice one, and nice question to end with. Haikel, thank you, man. Thank you so much for being our friend and for talking to our community here. We're going to be dropping Haikel's presentation, all the links, not just into the chat box, but into splicebeta.com/resources. All the sessions, all the speakers get a resource page, and we're going to try and populate that as much as possible, not with the video and all the links from Haikel's chat, including that job list that you were talking about.
Yep.
It would be great to see some of that, some media startups grow from that, and hopefully bring some of those folks back to beta next year. With that, should we be wrapping this up? And we have I see our Danish friends waiting to have some drinks with us.
That's right. So, well, we've made this back to back so that we can extend some of these conversations into the next hour. Next hour is bring your online beverage.
BYOB.
For us, it's beer. We wanted to just kind of hang out with everyone and just have a conversation. So we have our friends from IMS who are here as well. They wanted to talk a little bit about the new platform that they're building called Media Bridge. So stick around for that one.
It's going to be Henrik, Jesper, and Miguel. Miguel is not from IMS, but we'll be hearing more about her and Indie Frame a little later. But really looking forward to that.
So we'll close off this session for now. Everybody go get yourself a beverage in hand and come back in about 3 minutes, and let's have drinks together.
I know Henrik mentioned a morning beer.
That's right.
I think
Henrik probably has it with him already.